To be in sales, you got to have thick skin because people are going to shoot you down. That's the real world. And just like life, people are going to hurt your feelings, and that's the real world. And it's no different for me as well. I really want to film a 2019 Toyota Tacoma review, and so I go to my neighboring Toyota dealership, and I always help salespeople start their own YouTube channels. I help dealerships start their own YouTube channels so you can create an enormous amount of advertising without spending any money. But let me tell you something, I never been kicked out of a place so fast in my entire life. Burglars who break into houses get kicked out more slowly than I got kicked out of that dealership. But an important lesson I learned early on is that sales is like the navigation unit in your car. If you miss a turn, the navigation unit doesn't go, oh well, I guess we're screwed, we're never going to get there. No, it simply recalculates and finds another way to the destination. And with that in mind, voila, a 2019 Toyota Tacoma, this one an SR5 TRD crew cab that we're going to take a look at. But there's a reason I wanted to look at a Tacoma particularly, because I wanted to go over two different things about this truck. One is the Atkinson-cycle motor, what's that all about? And two is the frame. What's the story with the frame on these Tacomas? Is it a problem, or has Toyota figured out a solution? Let's take a look at the engine first and start there. Now, all engines in the modern world are what are called Otto cycle engines, or OTTO, named after Nicholas Otto, who invented the technology back in 1874. He might have borrowed it actually from some other folks, but he's the one who put it all together. That's the four-stroke engine that we've known forever and ever. There's an intake stroke, a compression stroke, a power stroke, and an exhaust stroke. Well, that's all engines forever and ever. In 1882, a rival, James Atkinson, he created the Atkinson-cycle, which has a longer intake, or what we call expansion, and a shorter compression. Well, that's different, it's much more efficient, but it comes at the expense of power. Also, it comes at the expense of being able to expel the exhaust out of a car. So, well, that's weird. Engines, they're all about getting power, so nobody would want that kind of engine. And then if you were to have that kind of engine, you'd do it simply for efficiency, and you'd still need something to push all that exhaust out of there. So engines had superchargers on top of them. Well, that's more complicated, worse gas mileage, and you've never heard of Atkinson-cycle motors. However, when efficiency mattered most, it mattered to Toyota for the Prius. So when the early Prius came out, they looked at the Atkinson-cycle and actually moved forward with it because the Prius had a battery, and they could use the battery to push that exhaust out of there and get the best of all worlds, all that real world gas mileage and economy, and it was an engine that really got the most out of what gasoline went through it. Fantastic for Toyota. But to use it in a truck seems like the opposite of logic because it just doesn't generate as much power as its own other kinds of engines, every other kind of engine in the world does. But they went for it anyway because they created some novel solutions along the way. One is simply using atmospheric physics to help pull the exhaust out of the engine. But the other is they use not one, but two different variable valve timings, because there are two different compression ratios when you have a oblong or a longer intake or expansion and a shorter compression. And so to cope with that, they also created two different fuel injection concepts. So this has both port fuel injection and direct fuel injection. Port fuel injection puts gas directly onto the port, and direct fuel injection puts it directly onto the cylinder. And so by creating all of these different physical processes, they got the most power out of an Atkinson-cycle engine while benefiting from great gas mileage. So this is a 3.5 liter V6 engine. It puts out 278 horsepower to go with 265 foot-pounds of torque. But they could get that kind of power out of any engine. So why would they go through the trouble of something so risky? Well, one thing is it's not risky at all because they've been trying it on the Prius for so long, and the Prius has racked up tens of millions of miles all over the world, and the resale value is extraordinarily high on the Prius because the quality is so superb. Also, that dual fuel injection concept they've been putting into use in the Scion FRS for the past many years, now called the Toyota 86, and so that dual mode fuel injection also has become a tried and true, if not superlative, way of delivering gas to the engine. And so now you have something that gets gobs of power. This is a big heavy truck that'll tow 6,800 pounds. It'll also get 20 miles per gallon in the real world with knobby off-road tires and a 4,500 pound four-wheel drive truck, which is really fabulous gas mileage, and it'll do it even with an automatic transmission. Now the other part about this truck is the frame. The frame it wasn't a nightmare for Toyota, but it was a big problem. And so the frame rusted. In fact, it rusted really, really badly. And so it rusted so badly that you would get holes in the frame, and as a result, you'd see a lot of warranty work done with Toyota trucks where they actually had to disassemble the entire truck, have a frame shipped to the dealership, and then reassemble the truck around a new frame. I'm gonna pop inside. And so having a new frame that's the same as the old frame seems like a pretty crazy idea if you were me. What Toyota did is they created a high-strength steel version of that old frame. Now a lot of people will tell you, high-strength steel, low-strength steel, medium-strength steel, whatever, it's the same frame. High-strength steel means it's an entirely new frame. High-strength steel isn't just steel that's strong. It has a specific carbon component that's between 0.25 and 0.5 of 1%. And so the carbon combined with nickel, copper, nitrogen, and even chromium makes the steel extraordinarily strong, but it also makes it rust-proof. Taking a look in back, well, just as roomy as you remember it. If you had 5 6-foot tall adults, 3 in the back, 2 in the front, everybody'd be completely comfortable. Now, high-strength steel, getting back to that. You can't work on it. It's so strong, you can't get it into shape. So it's hot formed. It takes an enormous amount of pressure to get that into shape. And the only reason you can get it into shape at all is because they use things like zirconium and rare earth minerals just to make it workable at all. Well, that stuff's all super expensive. Well, it was worth it to Toyota. Toyota builds the best truck in the world. To continue having the best truck in the world, if it costs a little bit extra, that wasn't going to be a problem. Now, you heard me talk about being thick-skinned. Well, nothing's thicker skinned than the Toyota Tacoma. Remember how I said it's got heavy-duty steel? Well, it has ultra heavy-duty steel body panels, a subject we might talk about on a different occasion. Now, when these are set up for trailer tow from the factory, you know right out of the gate, it has a 6,800 pound trailer tow capacity. Well, that's great on a truck like this. It'll also hold 1,400 pounds inside the composite bed. One neat feature that it has is that if it's set up with factory trailer tow, it has tow sway protection as well. It's not to keep the vehicle from swaying, it's to keep what you're towing from swaying. That's a big deal in a city like Waikoloa where it's windy all of the time. Your boat or whatever it is you're towing in back might move around behind you. The sway protection actually modulates the brakes independently and will even take down the torque from the engine to make sure that everything is stable behind you. Composite bed, make sure you don't call it a bed liner. That makes all the Toyota people unhappy. It really is a composite bed, and again, it's designed to stand the test of time. Taking a look along the sides, well, it's always been a really good looking truck and nothing's changed. It's just how much stronger it is than it's ever been before is what makes it such a unique thing. I'm going to jump inside. We're going to take a look inside and turn it on. One neat thing, if you're buying one and you look at the VIN number of it, here I'm going to turn it on really quick. The VIN number, or vehicle identification number, if the VIN starts with a 3, that means it was built in Tijuana, Mexico. One of my favorite party cities in the whole wide world. I have abundant, amazing memories from the beautiful city of Tijuana, Mexico. I'd be thrilled to own a car built in Tijuana, Mexico. If it starts with a 5, that means it was built in San Antonio, Texas. Another amazing city and one of my favorite cities in the South. I love San Antonio, Texas. Either way works for me. It's hard for Toyota to keep up with demand. Over 100,000 trucks are made every year just in San Antonio, but the market demands over 200,000 of these every single year. They're doing everything they can to ramp up the San Antonio production to over 160,000 this year. And there's probably room for a lot more than 200,000. I think Toyota could sell as many of these as they could possibly make. Now inside, it's pretty quiet for what it is. A smaller truck tends to be a little bit noisier, especially with knobby tires. Toyota has acoustic glass, so acoustic glass not only means it's quieter inside, but the noise that does come through is more pleasant. The other thing that it does to make the car quieter overall is simply make it aerodynamic. Most trucks don't care about aerodynamics that much. Toyota absolutely cares because it makes for a much more pleasant experience. Now, I have a fun video that's going to show after this video about a Toyota Tacoma that I took in for $1 that turned around and next day sold it for $2,750 after I created such a panic because of that silly video that the wholesalers were practically fist fighting each other to get their hands on that dang truck. Well, that's what makes the Tacoma different than everything else. Tacomas have a reputation unlike anything else in the whole wide world. Tacomas cannot be killed. You could put sand in the engine instead of oil. They're just going to run. They just do. They're the best built truck of all time. They have the highest resale value of any mass-produced thing that's ever been made. They're just the absolute pinnacle of the automobile industry. There was some worry. A whole new engine technology that dates back to 1882, that sounds complicated. A frame that's the same frame as the sore spot from the prior vehicle, that's a little bit complicated. Let me tell you something, don't overthink it. The engine is utterly bulletproof. The frame is the best frame that money can buy in a truck sold in the United States, period. And the resale value on the Tacoma used is as strong as the price on these new. It is the best truck that you'll ever get your hands on. I can make a strong case for the Honda Ridgeline as a daily driver, as something that's fun to own as your only vehicle, but there's nothing quite like a Tacoma. Take the plunge if you've never owned one and do yourself the biggest favor in the world. They are utterly fabulous. I'd be thrilled and honored if you'd subscribe to my channel. Take a look at the Tacoma video that's to come, and if you have any questions of me, don't forget, Tunney@gmail.com.